Hello everyone, I'm Don McDermott. Most of you will know me as the chap who's building Lady Garnet, the first new Norfolk trading wherry since 1912. But in addition to being a boat builder, I'm also a very keen sailor, and last weekend I was crewing on the Thames Aerator Tara in the Three Rivers race on the Norfolk Broads. Now I've done this race 3 times now, and as you can probably guess from the title of this video, this time didn't quite go according to plan. It was a very windy day for the race, 20 knots of wind gusting well over 30. But we still had a great time, and we were able to get some good footage of what we were able to do of the race and some footage of the aftermath of our disaster. So we launched Tara on the Friday. It was good to see some old and new faces at Horning. Thanks to Paul Armitage, who does a lot of work on aerators, for helping us with the launch, and also Harrison there on the right. It was lovely to meet him, and also the folks who sail on Catsnip. Both Harrison and the Catsnip crew began following my build of Lady Garnet a few weeks ago, and it was great to be able to catch up with them in person. And just like that, we're away. Our start was at 11:50, and we had several Norfolk punts on our start, along with a star and another aerator, number 14, the red-hulled Spindrift, who are our chief rivals at Upper Thames Sailing Club. Now, you'll notice that Spindrift got off to a quicker start. And one of the reasons for this is that due to the high winds, we used our small main, as you can't reef raters. Spindrift also used their small main, however, Spindrift's small main is slightly larger than ours. So you can see they built up a bit of a lead. There's Spindrift jibing around into South Walsham Dyke, which leads to South Walsham Broad, where the first mark was. And there's us, a little further behind, but a lovely jibe, I must say. It looks a lot calmer than it felt. But anyway, with the wind behind us, the slightly larger main helped Spindrift. But when beating against the wind, that was our time to shine. But we weren't going to be doing that just yet, as we had to run down through Acle Bridge first. And you see us going through Acle stern first, which is actually a good way to do it against a northerly, and also nice when you have the mast sticking over the stern to have that in front of you when steering. So there's the mast going up again, other side of Acle. That was one of the nicest parts of the race because the bridge blocks the wind. So we carried on down to the Stracy Arms, rounded that mark, and headed back up to the bridge. You see me there just jumping ashore. I'll give you a bit of advice. If you ever do the race at Acle, just where we moored up, is not a great place to jump ashore, as there really isn't a lot to jump onto. I was afraid I was going to go right through and get wet feet. But I didn't, so it's all good. Here's our sail coming down. Don't get caught by the jib. Too late. Mast going back up, and particularly for headphone users, be aware I'm just going to let you hear the natural sound now so you can hear just how windy it was. Probably the most nerve-wracking part of my job as mid-hand is pushing the boat off, because you want to give a really good push, but you don't want to find that the boat is going away without you and you've got too far to jump. Also, looking at the video, didn't realize how wide the Bure is at Acle. It doesn't feel that wide when you're sailing. But anyway, off we go, up the Bure to Potter Heigham and Hickling Broad, or maybe not. Oh look, there she is. So a bit of an explanation of what happened to poor old Tara. So after we came back through Acle Bridge, we carried on up the Bure towards Thurne Mouth. And starting from about 3 o'clock, the wind, which as mentioned had already been pretty strong, began gusting quite regularly at about 35 knots. And we were beating up against the wind, so there was a lot of pressure on the mast and on the sail. And all of a sudden, we were going great, we'd passed Spindrift, and then the forestay snapped. And for non-sailors among you, the forestay is a piece of metal wire that runs from the bow or the front of the boat all the way up to the top of the mast, and effectively, it holds the mast in place. So, not a good thing to have break, especially not in that kind of wind. So what we did was we jammed her bow into the reeds. I quickly uncleated the main halyard, we dropped the main, and then we sorted out how we were going to lower the mast. We couldn't drop the jib we had it completely loose, flogging so loudly that Dan on the foredeck was about 7 feet away from me and my sister Allie, and we could hardly hear him sometimes. The jib actually tore because the wind was so strong, but we couldn't drop the jib, as I say, because that was basically all that was holding up the mast, in addition to me and Allie, who were leaning against it with all our might. So we worked out how we were going to drop it. We tried to wait till there was a bit of a lull in the wind, which there never really was. And we had to wait for some boats to go by astern of us because an aerator mast, when you drop it, sticks out about 20 feet over the stern. So it'd be a bit dangerous to drop it with boats coming through. So we finally got ready to drop it, but the problem was as well is that we were broadside to the wind. And what that basically meant was that the wind was trying to shove the mast over the side of the boat. So we started to lower. Allie was on her usual rig where she pays out the line, and Dan and I were guiding the mast down, and basically it was trying to swing over the port side of the boat. So Allie stopped paying out the line and I jumped up onto the side deck, which Tara doesn't really have much higher side decks, but it was just enough so that I wasn't trying to push from over my head, but rather pushing at eye level and able to shove the mast so that it actually landed on the boat. At that point, we were able to get a tow, and this was quite fortunate. A spindrift had passed us while we were in trouble, and they went up to the guard ship at the mouth of the Thurn and told them that Tara had ended up in a bit of trouble, and also that they, Spindrift, were going to retire because the conditions were just getting to be too much, which I think was a wise decision. We obviously were going to have to retire because I suppose we could have jury-rigged our forestay, but in wind like that, you wouldn't dare sail with a jury-rigged forestay. So the guard ship sent down a safety boat to us, and they took us back up to the guard ship, and from there we were transferred to a larger cruiser run by more volunteers from the Three Rivers race. And I have to say at this point, the Three Rivers race is always so well run, but when you actually get into a bit of trouble on a day like that, you realize just how well organized they are. It was incredible. We could hear the radio going all the time while we were being towed along. Basically, the folks back in Horning know where every boat is pretty much the entire time. And up at Hickling Broad, things were apparently really wild. In about a span of 15 minutes, around 4 o'clock, they had 5 safety boats operating rescue operations on Hickling Broad. So in a way, I'm kind of glad we never got there, to be honest, because who knows, something worse might have happened. So I think we were all pretty disappointed to have to retire, but at the same time, rather pleased that we were able to lower the mast in those conditions and get all the way safely back to Horning with nothing worse than a torn jib and a broken forestay. Well, that's what's happened to our forestay. Pulled out of the thing at the top. So as I say, not quite the most successful race, but we still had a good time, and there we all are, happy and smiling, ready for next year.